Alright, Mike, I'm first time doing a recording, so recording like this, so I guess you'll kind of have to bear with me on the whole process. Not sure how good or bad I'll be at this whole thing, in terms of just like streamlining the process, so there's like not a bunch of wasted time. I I mean, there's marked places where I took notes and all that, and so yeah, we're going to just start here.
350 big blinds deep, and on this board, it would not shock me if we just get a call down by 9-8 off this deep. And when that's true, just max crank with value.
So yeah, we're talking about the hand on the left.
Cool. Next one, 3103. Ace 5 off suits.
Okay.
My note says...
Just want to go over...
check raises turn.
I want to go over like very specific...
Because the pre-flop raiser checks back the flop, and I assume that's just like we perceive him to be weak or capped. So, and we check raise... Like, a check raise just fucks with his whole range, right? And we can do it like super, super wide, and it has to be huge because of the wetness of the board. And now when it gets... watch the hand, and then river is kind of interesting.
So, we'll talk about the turn first. So,
sure.
Like, on this turn, like, what do you think? You've listed most of the good reasons for why we want to check raise here, particularly with our hand. Does it make sense for us to check raise value on the turn?
I don't know. I personally, like, if I had value here, I'd be betting. So,
okay, so, like, in a situation where flop goes check, check, and whatever turn comes, when are we incentivized to construct check-raising ranges?
So, here's an interesting thing, because, like, you kind of, like... So I think this is a poor question for him, because it's kind of, like, theoretical base. Like, when are we incentivized to have check-raising ranges? Like, very theoretical base, and then you end up, like, changing it once you see he struggles, and I think your change is really good here. So, yeah, you'll see.
When the flop goes check, check, and the turn... Say that again? Sorry?
When the flop goes check, check, what needs to be true for us to want to construct check-raising ranges?
So yeah, you change the question... Like, you basically ask the same question, but you just say what needs to be true. Initially kind of, like, struggle with it, pause, ask you to kind of, like, ask it again, and now he gives, like, pretty good reply, I think.
There's one key thing that has to be true, otherwise we have no incentive.
We have to assume turn gets stabbed?
Yeah, or just bet.
Or bet, yeah.
Yeah, and...
So I guess this particular card seems good for him to stab, maybe? I don't know.
So, this card would be very different. How is this jack different as opposed to a turned 3?
This is a really good question, and really, like, gets him to where you want him to get.
For example, like an offsuit 3. Like, how does that change what we think villain is going to bet, like, delay stab on the turn here?
Is it as simple as he can rep the jack, and he can't rep, like, the 3 doesn't improve his range, or is there something deeper?
There's another component, like, what does the jack improve for him? Like, the jack is the jack. I'll just get at it. Basically, the jack.
I have this noted differently. Trying to think how to reply here. So, I had this going down differently in my head, but it seems like this is kind of like the turning point of the session for you, kind of mentally. Like, after you ask this, like, question and don't get a good reply, and then, like, he starts, like, laughing at himself. I think you kind of like lose confidence in your ability to ask good questions or get good like feedback from him. But I feel like he gave a good reply. Well, let me rewind a bit.
A turned 3, for example, like an offsuit 3. Like, how does that change what we think villain is going to bet, like, delay stab on the turn here?
Is it as simple as he can rep the jack and he can't rep, like, the 3 doesn't improve his range, or?
So yeah, he's saying like he can rep the jack, like, and you're asking basically what a better question perhaps would have been was just like, how can we rep the jack? Like, how can he represent the jack? What hands specifically is he representing?
There's something deeper.
There's another component, like, what does the jack improve for him?
Like, what does the jack improve? How does the jack improve for him? Is a less direct question than what hands in his range like this card. You know, what hands in his range like the jack? Which sounds similar, but isn't. Hold on one second. Hey girls, I'm recording a video and you guys be quiet. Okay, so yeah, I think these questions that, like, it's basically the same question. It's just like, what cards, what hands in his range, like, hit the jack here. Guys, like, every time I'm making go into my recording, I have to redo the recording every single time that these guys make noises. So I'm actually going to post this with like the errors in it and all that, just 'cause it's my first time like doing a video and I don't want to add like extra stuff to it. Just don't want to make it like extra difficult. But anyways, so slightly different question, so kind of just reiterating it.
Rep, like, the 3 doesn't improve his range, or is there something deeper?
There's another component, like, what does the jack improve for him?
So like, what does the jack improve for him? It's like a bit confusing, different. It isn't as like straightforward as the question of like what hands in his range like the jack. And it's like, it seemed very clear that he actually understood what was going on here, that like he hits the jack more often and all that. Okay, so going to reshoot from here. I don't want to hit re-record on this fucking thing.
Checks back the flop, and I.
Okay, so hey Mike, hope you fast forwarded and didn't listen to all that like rambling and pauses and all that. So just redoing it from here and everything. Rather than make a new video and back and forth, so I could do errors and give you timestamps. So I might make an error for like 3-4 minutes, and then I'll just like give you a timestamp or some type of note to just remove that, instead of just having like redo the whole fucking video and like add the stress. Like, I would just want to know like I could fuck up, because I've never done a video review like this before. So it's a lot easier for me, like back and forth conversation style, so this kind of just helps me get over the whole process of that, the learning process. And I've also made notes, and as I get better, I'll get better at the note making system and all that. But anyways, we're going to start with this ace-5 hand. He defends, and flop goes check, check, or Matt does, at least.
I assume that's just like we perceive him to be weak or capped. So can we check raise, like, a check raise just fucks with his whole range, right? And we can do it like super, super wide, and it has to be huge because of the wetness of the board. And now when it gets, sorry, watch the hand.
On this board, it would not shock me if we just get a crank with value.
Okay. Cool. Next one, 3103.
Hey Mike, hope you fast forwarded at this point. I'm pretty new to just making videos as like a way of coaching. So instead of like me like deleting when I fuck up and all that, I'm just going to be giving you like timestamps. So I have like a 5-minute fuck up period. I'm just be like fast forward for those 5-minute fuck ups. So yeah, that way I don't have to like keep deleting and remaking videos. I remember when I used to make videos on YouTube, I had this issue a lot. Also, might be an issue with my note-taking process. I took a bunch of notes, but wasn't sure how to like optimally make the notes. I think I actually had like a better idea of how to do it now, like second time around already. But yeah, there's gonna be a decent amount of like fuck ups with that. But anyways, we're going to this hand, ace-5 right here, and we're gonna go into some very specific reads or whatever and specific lines, but also want to talk about overall game plan strategy towards the end.
Ace-5 offsuit. My note says check raises turn because the pre-flop raiser checks back the flop, and I assume that's just like we perceive him to be weak or capped. So can we check raise? Like a check raise just fucks with his whole range, right? And we can do it like super, super wide, and it has to be huge because of the wetness of the board. And now when it gets, sorry, watch the hand, and then river is kind of interesting.
So, we'll talk about the turn first. So,
sure.
Like, on this turn, like, what do you think? You've listed most of the good reasons for why we want to check raise here, particularly with our hand. Does it make sense for us to check raise value on the turn?
I thought this was a good opening question, by the way.
I don't know. I personally, like, if I had value here, I'd be betting. So,
okay, so, like, in a situation where flop goes check, check, and whatever turn comes, when are we incentivized to construct check-raising ranges?
Okay, so here's an example of questions that I think will go poorly overall with Costa. And for what it's worth, you do a very good job of just like changing the question a bit. So you could kind of see just already like that you have the ability to do it. So you kind of ask like, when are we incentivized to construct check raising ranges, which is like a lot more abstract and theoretical, right? And he gets kind of confused, and look how you change it.
When the flop goes check, check, and the turn... Say that again? Sorry?
When the flop goes check, check, what needs to be true for us to want to construct check-raising ranges?
Okay, so much more practical, you know, less abstract, which is good, I think. And you also add one more point to it.
There's one key thing that has to be true, otherwise we have no incentive.
One key thing that has to be true, otherwise we have no incentive. Like, I think that's very pointed and good, and you get a good reply here as a response to that. Like, I think because he's just looking for one key thing instead of like an overall thing. That like was a very nice simplification, very nice move into practicality, and away from like abstraction. And I think that's kind of a general theme here.
We have to assume turn gets stabbed?
Yeah, or just bet.
Or bet, yeah.
Yeah, and...
So I guess this particular card seems good for him to stab, maybe? I don't know.
So, this card would be very different. How is this jack different as opposed to a turned 3?
So yeah, this was a good question, But this is an interesting turning point in the video. Very interesting turning point.
For example, like an offsuit 3. Like, how does that change what we think villain is going to bet, like, delay stab on the turn here?
Is it as simple as he can rep the jack and he can't rep, like, the 3 doesn't improve his range, or is there something deeper?
There's another component, like...
Okay, so he's, like, onto it. Like, that makes a lot of sense. I think where you want him to get to go is, like, what specific hands he can rep the jack with, like very specific combos that would check the flop, bet the turn. And I think you also want to think about, like, him to think about his, like, 10x and stuff. But you asked another question that is a bit too abstract as well, again.
What does the jack improve for him?
So what does the jack improve for him? Like, it's more of like a whole range, less pointed overall, like, doesn't point to, like, it's not nearly as specific as, like, what card, like the question, what cards in his range gain a lot of equity on a jack? What hands does he have that check back the flop and have a jack in it? Something like that. Perhaps that one's too easy, but stuff like that he would answer a lot more clearly. So generally, the more concrete, I don't know if concrete, there's definitely the abstract to concrete component. There's also just like you asking him from like overall strategy versus like, you know, what cards in his like range improve on the jack is much more pointed, right? Even though it's like very similar question. And then there's an interesting turning point here.
Like, the jack is, the jack, I'll just get at it. Basically,
Okay, so you both, like, he starts laughing at himself, kind of just self-consciously, because he sucks, or he thinks he sucks. I don't mean that he sucks, but, you know, he just feels like he's just doing shitty. And then you kind of, like, laugh too and affirm that, and then you also kind of affirm that by, like, alright, let's move on, you're not going to get this, and you just tell him the answer. Which could be fine in a vacuum, but I think you skewed very heavily to the, like, so you started off asking a bunch of questions in like these first two hands, and now you're just like, all right, I'm just gonna tell him whatever. So overall general question asking skills, like, move to more concrete, point to specific things rather than overall strategies, specific points. So for example, how does this improve his range is a bit more overall, whereas more specific, what cards in his range like improve on this turn, like improve their equity or gain outs or whatever. I guess the 10x doesn't make sense. I guess you're really just looking for jack x, but so yeah. Okay, and yeah, we'll keep going from here.
the jack, when the jack field rolls off, he's just going to turn a lot of top pairs that are going to want to bet for value size protection here. Whereas on a 3, nothing really improves that's in that check back range, so you're going to get a lot more check backs there. Therefore,
so like it's better for his range. Like he can actually have more jacks.
Yeah, it's not even like better for his range. It's that a lot of his check back range improved to a hand that now wants to bet 2 streets, or at least bet 1 street for value slash protection. Whereas on a very innocuous card where his showdown or like air type hands still is just like a total brick and he has showdown, like now we have 0 incentive because stabbing regions are just going to be incredibly low. It also helps.
I'll be right back. I need to grab a pen to make notes for timestamp.
helps when it's the turn card is one where he has top pairs, but it also creates some additional type equity for him. He's a little more likely to stab stuff like Queen 10 or King 10 or Ace 10 on this turn when he improves to especially like Queen 10 being a nut gutter here. So when basically it's like when an overcard comes to the board and we think that people are going to bet those top pairs at high frequency, it makes sense to take our nutty hands and check raise in order to apply max pressure to that. So that's what I think Matt was going for here, is that on China, nobody's checking back top pair here. Like, the main question, what this really pivots around is, do you think your average China reg is going to check back something like Jack 10 or Queen Jack on this turn? And the overall consensus that I've seen on China is just no, they have top pair and they're going to bet. Therefore, I want to be check raising stuff that beats all their top pairs. And if I'm check raising all of those strong hands, it also makes sense to put in bluffs like this.
Okay, cool.
And also, I'm fairly confident that Matt makes this size, both with his value bets and his bluffs, because he can go as massive as he wants, because villain is just capped to something like Jack 8 here. Like, Matt can have like every single 10-9.
You just spend the rest of the time complaining. I mean, not complaining, telling him what to do. Sorry, wrong word.
Against the pre-pot 3 better on?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he was
there's one reason.
Wants to.
So. Deep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh. Only 250 bigs deep.
Yeah. Bunkos check.
Yep. One of the wettest textures you can get.
Yeah. And turn size question. I would have probably myself mash the pot button or slide over bet, and he just 2/3 it. And is it a mistake for me to want to do that, or is this just like whatever?
So, the spot is actually pretty interesting. So, like as the button here, like why is Matt checking kings here?
I don't think he is going to get 3 streets. That range is probably like the nutted part of, like 6s, 7s, and 9s are going to be more in cutoffs range than Matt's, because those are mostly flats, I think. It's a board that's, a texture that a lot of people like to put pressure against the pre-pot 3 better on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was
there's one reason, and it's close.
Okay, so I think this is an important overall tactic and just this very specific line. So I think he gives perhaps it's like your view is that it's simple, but I think generally like this is a pretty good dig or scope or whatever on his part. And I think finding the times to like let him know that this is like a good analysis is actually important, especially when when he had like that hand where he like laughs at himself. I think like recalibrating that, or just giving him some confidence, like especially like when he's laughing at himself, even it kind of sounded like he was like a little self-conscious and like laughing at himself like during this explanation a little bit, just kind of unconfident. So just kind of letting him know that that is a good analysis so far is important. It's not something you should overuse. Like if you did it every fucking time, it would be like, alright, this is like kind of ridiculous. But in spots where you think he does a better analysis than you expected, or better than his average, I think that should be referenced, especially when he's feeling unconfident to start, and like that hand at like 6-7 minutes ago. And I think this pretty important.
to that I'm looking for here.
Why does he check it back? I don't know.
The reason that
Okay, so yeah, so you're looking for one more reason. So you're looking for one more reason, and it's the question is a bit more vague, but finding the right question is kind of hard here. But you could have kind of mixed it together with like the question of why is it hard to get 3 streets of value with this hand, and I think you might have got to the point that you were trying to get to. So what is the other reason that it's hard to get 3 streets of value out of this hand, other than he has those sets and stuff? And he probably would have came to that. So it's a bit more pointed. You're putting in bets. You're trying to put in bets. He can reference the times like when he's putting in bets and like with hands like this and what happens. A lot of the board changes and spots where he just has to check. He's forced to, and he can kind of find that. So it's a bit more practical. It's actually a bit more practical, even though your question like on the abstract, the concrete continuum, like it isn't that abstract. Skewing more towards practical. When you have a question that isn't getting a good response, try to your adjustment should be to skew practical and specific. So make it more specific, make it more practical.
So it's similar to the reason why Buddy can apply raw pressure on this board, and not just on the flop, but potential and future streets, is because the board is very dynamic for kings. There are plenty of turns where kings just becomes absolute shit for us.
Yeah.
Last thing we want is a bloated pot when that is true, when we're this deep.
Okay.
Okay, and yeah, you just kind of went into explaining, and I think you were kind of just thrown off from that hand, which is actually just something that's happened to me. Like I have a few questions that go kind of poorly and don't land, and the person just doesn't respond well to them, and I kind of just like pack it in. Okay, 27 minutes, ace-jack suited.
Was there more to the hand or next one? Okay.
Get a lot of money. 40, 49. This is just like a 40, 49, ace-jack of diamond.
Oh, I should mention, you had a really nice analysis.
I think against a fish I would definitely.
You had a really nice analysis on the sizing, which like I actually like learned.
Spaz out with their like perceived good equity. Like
yeah, that would be my concern as well, and why I would also check even against a recreational player.
Hold on, I have to find it.
If it's a on this turn.
Yeah, so that's like my next note. Like, can preflop caller have more slow plays here than he would than he normally would in a single race pot because 3-bet ranges are nerfed? And is that why Matt went 2/3 instead of larger?
So I think that was a really good point. Like I think that's a really good point and a really good question, and probably better than his average. I think this is a good time to kind of let him know that. And let's rewind it just to make sure you kind of get it from the beginning, and so you can hear
Aces,
it again.
kings, queens, jacks, all that overpair region. This
guy can still have slow plays on the turn then?
It makes sense for villain to have some check
Let's go
rate.
a bit backer, because you made a really nice point here. And
so even though...
Okay, okay, just making a note. Sorry.
Kings is like an overpair. Like our overall 3-bet range is just not doing that great on equity in comparison.
Which is
to
but
so
I think it's pretty standard, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, and the follow-up question, the follow-up is that I think this is a texture that like everyone kind of knows that this flop is checked, like pretty damn often. So the reason that I think Matt is scaling down is because given that it's very it's known that like boards like this are checked by aces, kings, queens, jacks, all that overpair region. It now
This guy can still have slow plays on the turn then?
it makes sense for villain to have some check raises because like all those overpairs are perceived to like overpairs are always checking flop and they're never checking turn.
Yeah, I just thought that was a really nice analysis there. I did not consider that, like reg versus reg. I guess I don't like play against good enough players where like that's a thing.
On this turn.
Yeah, so that's like my next note. Like, can preflop Clobber have more slow plays here than he would in than he normally would in a single race pot because 3-bet ranges are nerfed? And is that why Matt went 2/3 instead of larger?
Pretty much.
That
and
plus.
it's also just the perception that Buddy can easily construct a check raise range against us for very easy reasons.
Against the fish, though. What about large sizing?
Is this a fish?
Well, I don't know. I can't see any of the stats in Matt's videos.
If it's against some fish, I don't hate it if stacks are shallower and we can just like bet flop, jam turn, get money in against random queen 10 off type stuff.
I still don't know about betting flop against fish because like they might spaz out with their like perceived good equity. Like
yeah, that would be my concern as well, and why I would also check even against a recreational player.
Yeah, but I'm saying on the turn now when it's pretty fucking clear that these guys aren't going to be like having any slow plays anymore.
Yeah, I think against a fish I would definitely start bombing it for pot. I would be on board with that.
Okay.
So yeah, just actually didn't think his analysis was like all that interesting afterwards. Like start listening to the whole thing from the beginning. But yeah, I thought your analysis was very solid there. So we'll fast forward to here.
Quite easily, we have some turned kings.
Okay, looks like I did not do a good timestamp.
Hold the spot.
Because like it seems
like why would you want for one like very
yeah.
My answer is yes. If he jammed a river, do we just pitch it?
Yeah.
My answer is yes. I'd imagine. Do we just pitch it?
Yeah.
My answer is yes. I'd imagine. For one like very very key reason here. Like why would you want to just snap fold this spot?
Because like it seems completely suicidal to do this. We have like every set. We can slow play those quite easily. We have some turned king.
On to it. Third.
Okay, cool.
Mandatory overfolding if we're facing like any larger. At 1/3 here.
Diamonds. And it's just like, is this a super standard, simple question. And it's just like, is this a super standard, simple question, super standard float after the small blind squeeze, or is it close?
Only close because of the stack left. I'm not a fan that pot's going to be 1-to-1 by the third, 23rd pots, but just given how wide Matt is going to be peeling the squeeze here, just okay.
Get a lot of money. 40, 49. This is just like a 40, 49. Ace jack of diamonds. And it's just like, is this a super standard, simple question, super standard float after the small blind squeeze, or is it close?
Okay, so I think when he just asks you questions like this, you should just like put the question back on him. Like he shouldn't just be allowed like layups. Like this just would be a simple like, what do you think? He tries to get a lot of these like layups where you just answer, and you could just I have a very simple retort, what do you think? And just as part of like overall game strategy, coaching strategy, just not allowing these simple questions, making him think, see where he's at, get that information, see what mistakes he's making. But yeah, just a quick spot.
Only close because of the stack left. I'm not a fan that pot's gonna be 1-to-1.
But yeah, I'm just gonna skip the explanation.
Bet 1/3 here. It does make it a call because match. If we're facing like
off, just know it was. I assume we're folding river. That's my note.
Okay, so most of the hand isn't interesting until we get to like 29-20 here. But I'll just let you know what the action is. You peel the 3-bet.
I think we'll be getting like 3-1, but still.
You call.
And then
And then
assume we're folding if it gets jammed.
let's see how it runs out here. Even on 2x speed, people don't act fast.
he 1/3, and then he calls.
And I think that this would just be a pitch on the turn.
Oh, for sure, yeah. But
Is-
the flop and turn it seems like completely normal based on sizing, and then
Yeah, and the
reverse
question is
like,
if he jammed river, do we just pitch
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
My answer is yes. I'd admit.
Okay.
For one like very very key reason here. Like why would you want to just snap fold this spot?
Okay, so here's a spot where I think he does like really solid range awareness and all that, and like does one pretty good here.
It's because like it seems completely suicidal to do this. We have like every set. We can slow play those quite easily. We have some turned kings. Where he's going to give us such a great price that he can't be perceived to be getting a lot of folds.
Mm-hmm. There's like
So yeah, I think that's like pretty good analysis. Probably better than his average. Just like thinking about his range that he gets to river with and all that. That could be a spot where you kind of acknowledge that, especially if you haven't done it throughout the session. Obviously monitoring how much you do it, just repeating that is important, but I think he needs to know when he's doing good analysis and doing good stuff.
another characteristic about him, like if he bluffs, like what has to be true about his, what types of hands does he need to bluff against us?
If he bluffs, ace highs, which he probably, some people do, some people don't. I'm guessing most people don't.
Yeah, or
So he says ace highs, and I'm curious as to why. Perhaps this might be a time where you can see if he, no, so I mean there are good reasons, like, so you could say ace highs, and like that could be a good thought process if like there's something more refined there, like ace deuce, ace 3, ace 6, ace 7, like maybe ace queen wants to follow through, but like certainly not like all ace x is going to follow through or whatever. But just seeing what he really means when he says ace highs, because this could be a good process or a bad one.
or just
Is
like
there no showdown value?
just some like janky shit. So like some ace highs are just some random queen jack, queen 10 type stuff that's just no equity on.
Yeah, you could also just ask, like, is that all you could have here? Is that the only bluffs that make sense?
Yeah.
On this run out, because there's no flush draws on board and there's no obvious draws for him to barrel. So
Yeah.
and there's no obvious equity to really be barreling other than I guess ace 3 and ace deuce suited, but that's not much. It's not that often that people are going to be running those types of bluffs.
But then what about, like, if you thinking, using that logic, what do you think about the turn then? Like, if he has no obvious bluffs and he's betting this turn, like, all his value beats us. It'll just be like we're calling ace 8 because we beat his janky shit only, and
It's like
So basically he's just like asking you a question. I mean, you can kind of just like hint that, you know, there is a difference, and ask him what the difference is. Like, make him think about it. Like, you just answering is just like a layup for him. So yeah.
The weight
and
of
size
janky,
is really small.
The weight of janky shit not being in there is only true when he falls through on the river. I've seen enough janky shit when.
Okay, I'm going to skip ahead. 32 minutes, it looks like.
Whenever we're like dealing with stacks this deep, the draws that we go to are going to be like the nutty ones or the highest. With stack, yeah.
And stuff like bet this flop though, like does Jackson stuff be check raises? A 3-bet flop check raise. Okay, never mind.
Okay, so next hand, Jack 8 suited here. I'll just let you see the hand.
We're like 300 big blinds deep. He calls a 3-bet and he flops middle pair Jack high flush draw, and he check raises. And it's just like good candidate, clearly like beats a lot of like. Does Jackson stuff like bet this flop though? Like, I don't know. Is this a check call or like first? The reason I took a note is that I would have just like check call this and check raise my like non showdown combo heart draw. But then like thinking about it more, I'm just like, is any high equity like draw here just a good check raise this deep?
This deep, yes. Whenever we're like dealing with stacks this deep, the draws that we go to are going to be like the nutty ones or the highest equity ones. So like I think that this is a better check raise candidate than 10-9 of hearts. Really.
Okay.
I actually think that stuff like this and then ace high hearts are way better check raise candidates at this stack depth because the risk of getting 3-bet is just so minimal. Like he has to have kings basically, or like kings or aces. But like ranges are so wide that's just not much of a concern. And Matt also has a hand where, like, I mean, it's high variance, but he's fine getting all the money in. He has like no like high equity no matter what. Whereas a hand like those combo draws, if Buddy just gets in the ace high flush draw, we're hurting. We're really hurting.
So I thought this was a really cool point. So you do an explanation, but I thought it was really good because it's like an interesting general concept that I don't think about, like really deep. The difference between like the nut flush draw getting all the money in and like the non-nut flush draw. Not something I ever considered. Probably not something he's considered. Very like memorable, helpful, applicable to a bunch of situations. So this was a really nice spot, really nice explanation. I certainly got something out of it. I would be surprised if Costa didn't, and I'd be surprised if he didn't remember that. So I thought this was a very nice one. So I noted another question that was important. Why are you doing Bodog reviews with him? Bodog hands. Does he plan on playing Bodog? If not, I would like you guys to kind of reconsider that or discuss that. The ranges are very different. The games play completely different. I don't know if it makes that much sense. It's not like there's like an absence of China material. There's just so much in there. So he really doesn't have to like go down to like the Bodog vids to get something going. I don't think it made, I don't know, I just think it's suboptimal there. Okay.
deciding what hand.
Okay, so here's a hand where you have a7, Tim defends, and then check calls flop.
To call overbets with. Is this close to a candidate? It seems Tim was on the fence. Like we call every queen, and Tim was like, was thinking about it. And is this like close to a call, or do we have just like enough queens that we can?
Yeah, it is pretty close.
Okay, so yeah, this is another question where he's just looking for like a layup, not to really do any work. Just don't let him, and eventually, like, once he knows he can't get away with it, he just like will do it significantly less. The dynamic just needs to shift here. Like, these layups just shouldn't happen, and they free up energy for you to, like, a cool aspect is like the more you have to like explain and like expend energy and all that, it's like the harder it is later in the session. So just flipping it back on him, making him use that energy, making him think, do the work, not letting these layups happen. Very important, like, overall concept. And yeah, your explanation was on point as usual. I just skipped it. Okay, skipping ahead to
So like it's specifically like ace king through ace jack type stuff.
Sure, yeah.
That check. Sense for him to king.
Everything that beats ace king.
Pretty much, and I think that like it would make sense that if Buddy just had pocket sevens here, he does accomplish a decent amount of protection. And if he thinks that we have a lot of ace king, ace jack here, that it makes sense to thinking, oh, I'm facing bluffs here. It's that I think I can potentially beat
facing a lot of worse value.
Yeah,
very cool. I guess are perceived to be doing a lot. Hold on. Just say like a king or whatever off the river.
But it's one that I would make dicey.
I don't remember what Tim does. I don't remember what Tim does.
okay, so
Here are reasons here that
Got it.
so strategy, and for now,
Okay.
I would recommend you stick with that. River will be a very solid strategy, and for now,
Okay.
I would recommend you stick with that.
Got it.
So, and you know what? I'm just gonna say stick with it. There are reasons here that I can get on board with for actually having bets here, but it gets pretty fucking complicated. I won't lie. And until I fully understand it, I am not confident in being able to explain.
Sounds good to me. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, we're good.
Thank you. Gets checked.
okay, so here's the next hand. I think Tim 3-bet or something, and then check back the flop. I'm pretty sure that's what happened.
Raised, actually. I don't remember what Tim does. Does he call?
Dicey. I can't imagine he folds.
So what ends up happening here is that I think it's actually kind of important for you to hear out the whole thing, because you do a really nice breakdown, which was really cool, but it probably would have been best if you asked a pointed question at this point right here. But anyways, we'll play out the hand and then I'll show you what I mean.
thoughts on this call?
Not a happy one, but it's one that I would make here.
Okay, so thoughts on this call? Once again, you're just asking for a layup question. You give a really good analysis as to why he's calling this turn, even though, like, you know, we don't think he's bluffing all that often. Which I didn't consider. Like, I didn't consider, like, sets are gonna check raise here and shit like that, that we beat value. And I thought that was a really cool analysis, and I think just making him do that work, like what's his check raise value range, would have been a very nice question here. Just having him thinking about ranges a bit more concisely. I know that's something you did with me that was so helpful. Like, I just like wanted to be lazy and not think about specific combos, but making him do that very specific type of work, I think, can be really helpful for him. I think that this would have been a great spot for it. But anyways, your explanation was just really fucking good. Really cool analysis there. But drilling the concept, I think, would have been ideal. And we're lagging.
And just give up the river.
Okay, and 53.50.
That king 10 would be your lowest C bet. But now that we're on the
Can
Okay, so he raises ace
Yeah,
two.
is this the weak the ace is too weak to bet for
I would say so for like what types of hands are we looking to bet the turn?
like you were saying before on that first monotone board that king 10 would be your lowest C bet. But now that we're on the turn here at flop button check, does the value of our having the ace, is it more valuable? Fuck, I don't even know if it makes sense.
So, the king 10 off on.
Okay, so I'm going to repeat that, or actually you can re-listen to that. So he's kind of comparing this old king 10 offsuit hand on a monotone board, and you were like referencing your value range, and we was like, you know, he's basically just you know, asking a layup question, just like ask him why he thinks those two spots might be different, what are the differences there, and you know, just glean information from there, and then you know, you can ask a pointed, good, practical question from there. But yeah, it's fine to have like a lot of things. It's like a 2 or 3 question process until you get a better feel for where he's at in spots and have all that data and all that. So yeah, you end up just explaining to him. Yeah, just make him do the thinking. Okay.
King Jack.
Okay, 1 hour and something.
For protection here, and
protection just for like
protection / value, and
Okay.
and actually when Buddy's choosing
protection just for like
protection / value, and
Okay.
and actually when Buddy's choosing like this largest sizing, that we jam as opposed to call, and number that would be pretty sick. Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk, because I know I can't.
So it looks like the top left, 10-8 suited. He calls a 3-bet, and we'll play it out from here.
Access to the Europe. So that's 40 into 73 here, and then we call, and then we're facing a near pot size bound return.
pretty much pot. I think.
And then it's just a question of like, why didn't we jam as opposed to just calling here. And actually, there was a similar hand that I believe was Jake played in one of his recent Pokemon videos where he was like had similar thoughts where he had trips and was facing large bets and debating about jamming for protection here. And
protection just for like
protection / value. And and actually, when Buddy's choosing like this large a sizing, there are definitely merits to just locking in calls from like 10s through aces on this board.
Which is like the main reason for my jam.
Yeah, so I would say the weaker the player, the more I'm on board with jam. The better the player, the worse jamming becomes.
But is a really good player potting this turn?
So I thought this was a really good question. And it was a little bit of a challenge. Not exactly, but I thought it was a good question. I thought this would have been a good spot to acknowledge a good question from him. In terms of so far what I've seen, like levels of question asking, it's probably like above, this is certainly like above average, worth noting, acknowledging. Yeah, I think just that little bit of acknowledgement would have been good.
I think
like
I don't know. I want.
And yeah, that was the entire purpose of that hand.
Fault and go with call because calling is just amazing against his bluffs, and realistically there are a bunch of rivers where I'm still going to be stacking those over pairs, and the calling all draws because we're getting immediate price on them.
Can you skip the river really quick, because I think Tim bets when check too, and I think it's just solely because like the guy's never checking a flush, so Tim's hand is best always and just standard.
Yeah, it's exactly
cool.
that.
That's fine. Okay, cool. What are we at now? 2102, 8-9 offsuit. It's another one of those bet chat bets.
By the way, that was a good question that you posed, like with the whole flush draw thing, because you are right. If I'm on that assumption, it's more like I'm not like certain about it. It's like I'm just giving each other weight. On that assumption, it's more like I'm not opposed like with the whole flush.
It's another one of those bet chat bets.
Okay, so this is like a quick spot where like you're acknowledging something.
By the way, that was a good question that you posed, like with the whole flush draw thing, because you are right. If I'm on that assumption, it's more like I'm not like.
So yeah, this was the one spot where I found you acknowledge something, kind of like after the fact. I think that's a good start. This is episode 4 though, so I don't know, like adjustments you have made, but yeah, I just wanted to call that out as a good one. Okay.
Cool.
So it was queens or 9-8.
9-8 offsuit.
Looks like it's a stab small.
That's really stab small and flop. Check.
We're watching the 9-8 hand. If that's not clear, you just raise button, bet check bets.
And then he bets river just to
goes for half pot.
Yeah, which is like, I mean, we're targeting less than ace high, or are we expecting ace highs to call, or?
Yep, just like another like layup question. Just like put it on him. Like ask if that's enough. Is ace high enough? Are you expecting ace high to call? Like see what he thinks. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep reiterating that. I also made another note of asking what he thinks about the sizing here, whether that makes sense or not. I think that would have been important. And another type of pointed question would have been asking if he thinks the bet check bet line reps any value, if it's credible at all. I think that's like a very practical, concrete, very specific type of thing. Easy question for him to kind of answer there. So yeah, moving on.
Are we expecting the guy to put money in at some point with anything but the jack of clubs? Like, is he going to be betting flushes wide just to like think that he can get value from like just some ace king that took this line too, or?
It's part that. It's also like think about all the hands that we're going to be check calling with on the turn. D20.
You check. Oh yeah, so just play the hand, I guess.
Yeah.
Questions for the river.
I should hop back a minute each time.
Yeah.
Timestamps. See if I can drag it here. It looks like it starts at 29. So it looks like a 3-bet pot. Yeah, go from 10 to 50, which is good. Tim checks because monotone flop.
Yeah.
Super lulls. Tim checks again, which is status quo.
Yeah.
In these spots, and Tim
calls.
Check calls.
And then this river check.
And then Tim checks
Confused
river.
me. Is
yeah, it makes sense to me.
Are we expecting the guy to put money in at some point with anything but the jack of clubs? Like, is he going to be betting flushes wide just to like think that he can get value from like just some ace king that took this line too, or?
It's part that. It's also like think about all the hands that we're going to be check calling with on the turn.
Okay, so here is another example of a practical, concrete, very specific type of range question, and he does pretty well with it.
Like, yeah, all are king x, ace kings, king x's, some queens, I guess.
Yeah, even some like naked queen jack.
Yeah.
Pocket 10s with a club, pocket 9s with well, not 9s with a club, like jacks with a club. So we have a lot of like one pair, even like 2 pair.
So a villain can definitely be like value betting thin, quote unquote, thin here.
Yeah, villain can.
I thought that was a pretty cool dig from him. Potentially a spot to acknowledge that. Yeah, I thought he did. I think it's kind of hard to see like the thin value that's there and him getting to that on his own. With your question, I thought this was one of the better or best questions and responses that he got, and it could have been a spot. I made a note that you could have made him dig deeper, so let's read into that, and we'll see why from here.
Certainly have like the jack of clubs here, and more importantly, villain can certainly have bluffs here. Villain can certainly be taking stuff like ace jack.
Okay, so Um, yeah, he's doing well. I think this would have been a nice spot to like, you were bringing up bluffs, right? So like, he does a nice dig here, at least a decent dig, like finding the thin value bets, understanding his check call range. Now, if you acknowledge that plus ask the question, I think he's going to feel a lot more confident in like trying to find the bluffs for villain here as well.
Jack, potentially Jack 10, although it's not banned this river, but it's mainly like the Ace Jack and Ace 10 region that are going to be your bluffs.
Okay.
And actually, and the more that I think about it, villain is like, it's actually kind of interesting. Like, if we, like, what one club hands do you think villain has to be betting the turn with after checking flop?
Another really good question here. Very specific, very practical, concrete, and I think you get a good answer from him. I didn't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if you did.
Nine ten with a club, but no, because it's 3-bet pot. What am I talking about? Not many, right? Just like Ace Jack and the Ace 10.
Yeah, or
with one club that called a.
And Ace Jack is actually folded, or sorry, Ace 10 offsuit is a 4-bet fold for pre-flop, especially.
So yeah, those look very nice. Like, just like quickly, confidently found the two hands. I thought that was good.
When it's big blind versus button. So
Okay,
Ace
cool.
10, so it's like the only offsuit hand actually that gets in there, that isn't like King X. I think King Queen gets in there, not even King Jack. Is going to be Ace Jack with a club here.
Okay.
And so that means that Buddy's one club hand is purely restricted to either the Ace of Clubs or the Jack of Clubs, and then everything else is not going to be a club, because stuff like sevens with a club is not going to be betting the turn for us.
Okay. Cool.
So,
yeah. Sorry. Then that makes sense. The guy can value bet like worse and has a bunch of bluffs too. So.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think the fact that he used the word sorry is like indication of like mental state. Like, he did like really nice job there, and that he feels the need to like say sorry. Probably not like good, and good indicator like that, so acknowledge like some acknowledgement there earlier on would have been good. Like, not good when he's like doing good work and like he feels the need to like say sorry. So he seems like the type of person who's like a bit more self-conscious than the average dude, so putting in that acknowledgement when it's warranted at the right times. So overall summary, the question asking, so moving from abstract to more concrete, more practical, more pointed questions, not like, for example, one might be like open, like overall range type of things, to like, what about this part of the range, or this, what do you do with your value range, or like the nice questions you had there, like that got good responses. They were all like very pointed to the specific part of the ranges. They weren't as much of like open questions. So doing that, I think, will be a big move for you. Number two, the layup questions just like need to end. Like, it's okay to give some layups, but yeah, he's getting like way too many layups there. Just flip those questions back on him just easily. Like, it doesn't have to be a big thing. Just like, what do you think? And like, even just like doing a lot of those what do you thinks, like, not much skill involved, but it's just like sends the message, sets the tone. Like, I'm just throwing these right the fuck back at you. Like, I'm not expending any energy. I'm not like trying to rephrase it. Just like, what do you think? Going from there, I think that sets up a really nice dynamic. Number three, just fine. I think, fuck, what did I say is number one? Worst coach of coaches ever. The acknowledgement, I believe. Yep, so the acknowledgement, just notice when he does, kind of being mindful of when he might do something good throughout a session. It's kind of like the thing I have to do with like my kids, where it's like, if you want them to be disciplined, you can't just like point out all the bad shit they do, because then you're kind of just like an asshole. Like, who wants to listen to someone or be around someone that just like points out all the bad shit, you know, they do? Like, especially like a parent. Not that that's what you do, but you have to heavily balance that with for kids with like pointing out a lot more good things. So praising good things as well as like, you know, giving like negative feedback for bad things. Like, if you just do one, it's like not good. Or if you're just kind of like playing a neutral role, like that's not good. So I think finding those spots for acknowledgement and kind of controlling it so you're not actually doing it too much to the point where it becomes like disingenuine. Just find like the actual spots where he makes good, you know, digs or scopes or whatever the fuck word we use nowadays. It always changes over the years. So yeah, that's part one. I have notes on the other video, but I think this would be an ideal time to stop. Yep.
I just assumed that he didn't have that many.
And that's it. Hopefully this fucking recorded. I'm going to be very sad.